Julia Roberts was being handcuffed by FBI art crime team Special Agent David Chen in the marble lobby of the Metropolitan Museum of Art at 2:47 p.m. on a crisp October afternoon, accused of masterminding the largest art theft in American museum history. The 56-year-old Academy Award-winning actress found herself facing charges under the National Stolen Property Act for allegedly stealing $127 million worth of priceless masterpieces, including works by Van Gogh, Monet, and Picasso that had mysteriously disappeared from major museums across the country over the past 18 months. Agent Chen was convinced that America's sweetheart had been using her celebrity status and extensive art collection to operate a sophisticated international art theft ring, replacing original masterpieces with expertly crafted forgeries while selling the authentic works to private collectors in foreign countries. But what Agent Chen and the FBI art crime team didn't know was that Julia Roberts hadn't stolen a single painting. She had been conducting the most comprehensive private investigation of museum fraud in art history, and her suspicious activities were actually evidence she had gathered to expose a criminal network of museum directors, curators, and art dealers who had been systematically replacing priceless cultural treasures with forgeries while selling the originals for massive personal profits. The investigation had begun 8 months earlier, when Julia Roberts was expanding her personal art collection for her newly renovated Malibu home, working with prestigious auction house Sotheby's to acquire pieces that would complement her existing collection of contemporary American artists. As someone who had developed a genuine passion for art over her decades in Hollywood, Julia took the acquisition process seriously, researching provenance, consulting with experts, and ensuring that any piece she purchased had legitimate historical documentation. During a private viewing at Sotheby's Beverly Hills location, Julia was examining a supposedly authentic Van Gogh sketch titled "Woman in the Garden" when something about the piece triggered her instincts. Having studied Van Gogh's techniques extensively during her preparation for a film role years earlier, she noticed subtle inconsistencies in the brushwork and color choices that seemed inconsistent with the artist's documented style from that period. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story of how America's most beloved actress accidentally exposed the art world's biggest scandal, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest stories where the truth is more shocking than any Hollywood script. Your support means everything to us and helps us continue investigating these amazing real-life stories. Now let's continue with Julia's shocking discovery. Rather than simply declining to purchase the piece, Julia decided to investigate further, hiring Dr. Margaret Thompson, a forensic art expert from the Getty Conservation Institute, to conduct a comprehensive analysis of the Van Gogh sketch. Dr. Thompson's examination revealed that while the work was an exceptionally skilled forgery, it was definitely not authentic. The paint composition included materials that weren't available during Van Gogh's lifetime, and carbon dating placed the canvas creation at least 50 years after the artist's death. Ms. Roberts, this is a very sophisticated forgery, Dr. Thompson explained during their private consultation. The skill level required to create this piece indicates a professional operation with access to period-appropriate materials and extensive knowledge of Van Gogh's techniques. More concerning, the documentation provided by Sotheby's claims this piece came from the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, which suggests either the museum was selling authentic works without public knowledge, or someone has created false provenance documentation. Julia's discovery that a major auction house was attempting to sell her a high-quality forgery with fabricated museum provenance led her to question how widespread this practice might be throughout the art world. If criminals could create convincing forgeries and false documentation for one piece, how many authentic masterpieces might have been replaced with fakes in museums and private collections without anyone noticing? What do you think happened when Julia started investigating further? Was this just an isolated incident, or had she stumbled onto something much bigger? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing your theories about these incredible stories, and your engagement helps us bring you more content like this. Working with a team of art experts and private investigators that she funded personally, Julia began what would become the most comprehensive investigation of art fraud ever conducted outside of law enforcement agencies. The operation, which she privately called Project Authenticity, involved purchasing suspicious pieces from various auction houses, having them analyzed by independent experts, and tracing their supposed provenance back to their claimed sources. Over 6 months, Julia's team identified over 40 pieces offered by prestigious auction houses that appeared to be high-quality forgeries with falsified documentation claiming museum or estate origins. The pattern that emerged suggested a coordinated network of criminals who were creating fake masterpieces, fabricating provenance documents, and somehow obtaining the cooperation of legitimate institutions to validate their fraudulent claims. But the most shocking discovery came when Julia's investigators attempted to verify the provenance claims by contacting the museums that supposedly owned or had previously owned the pieces she had examined. The Metropolitan Museum, the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, and the Los Angeles County Museum of Art all confirmed that they still possessed the original works that auction houses claimed to be selling on their behalf. "Ms. Roberts, we have a serious problem," reported James Morrison, the former FBI art fraud investigator that Julia had hired to coordinate her investigation. "These auction houses are claiming to sell pieces that museums say they still own. Either the museums are lying about their collections, or someone has managed to replace authentic masterpieces with forgeries so convincing that museum curators don't realize their originals have been stolen." Julia realized that if museum pieces were being replaced with forgeries, the criminals responsible would need access to the museum's storage and display areas, detailed knowledge of security systems, and the ability to create forgeries sophisticated enough to fool professional curators and conservators. This suggested that the fraud network included individuals with legitimate positions within the museum system itself. To investigate this possibility, Julia began visiting museums across the country, using her celebrity status to arrange private tours and consultations with curators and directors. During these visits, she discreetly photographed and documented pieces that had appeared in questionable auction listings, looking for subtle signs that originals might have been replaced with high-quality reproductions. The breakthrough came during a private tour of the Metropolitan Museum's storage facilities, arranged through her connections in the entertainment industry. While examining pieces not currently on display, Julia noticed that several paintings showed signs of recent restoration work that wasn't documented in the museum's public records. More concerning, some of the pieces had subtle differences from high-resolution photographs taken for previous exhibitions and catalog publications. Dr. Thompson's advanced spectroscopic analysis revealed that these supposedly authentic pieces contained synthetic pigments that weren't invented until the 1960s, despite being attributed to 19th century masters. "Ms. Roberts, what we're seeing here is unprecedented sophistication," Dr. Thompson explained during their secure laboratory consultation. These forgeries required access to period-appropriate canvases, expert knowledge of aging techniques, and collaboration with museum-level conservators. This isn't the work of individual criminals. This is an organized network with inside access. Julia's investigation team expanded to include Dr. Sarah Chen, a forensic document analyst from Stanford University, who specialized in detecting fraudulent provenance documentation. Dr. Chen's analysis of the paperwork accompanying questionable pieces revealed a systematic pattern of forged museum stamps, fabricated exhibition histories, and counterfeit insurance appraisals that had been created using insider knowledge of legitimate museum documentation procedures. The criminals have access to actual museum letterhead, official stamps, and detailed knowledge of authentication procedures, Dr. Chen reported during an encrypted video conference with Julia's team. They're not just creating fake paintings. They're creating entire fake histories for these pieces, complete with exhibition records, insurance documentation, and curatorial assessments that would fool even experienced museum professionals. The investigation revealed that the forgery network operated through a sophisticated hierarchy of museum insiders, international art dealers, and master forgers working in coordinated cells across multiple countries. At the center was Dr. Richard Steinberg, the respected director of acquisitions at the Whitney Museum, who had been using his position to identify high-value pieces that could be replaced without immediate detection. Steinberg's operation involved recruiting museum conservators who had access to storage areas and authentication equipment, paying them substantial sums to facilitate the replacement of authentic pieces with expertly crafted forgeries during routine maintenance periods when increased activity wouldn't attract suspicion. The authentic works were then sold through a network of international dealers to private collectors in countries with limited art crime enforcement. Julia's team discovered that Steinberg had been operating this network for over 8 years, systematically targeting pieces that were in storage rather than on permanent display, ensuring that the thefts might go undetected for years or even decades. The criminals had stolen an estimated $800 million in authentic masterpieces, making it potentially the largest art theft in world history. To document this massive criminal enterprise, Julia employed cutting-edge authentication technology normally used by major auction houses and insurance companies. Her team utilized advanced X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to analyze paint compositions, infrared reflectography to detect underlying sketches and alterations, and radiocarbon dating to verify the age of canvas and wooden supports. The technical sophistication of Julia's investigation required coordination with international experts including Dr. Elena Rodriguez from the Louvre's Conservation Laboratory in Paris, Professor James Wilson from Oxford University's Art Authentication Program, and Maria Antonelli from Italy's Carabinieri Art Squad, who provided intelligence about similar forgery operations they had been tracking in Europe. Ms. Roberts, your investigation has uncovered connections to forgery networks we've been pursuing for years, Professor Wilson confirmed during a secure international video conference. The techniques being used match workshops we've identified in Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia, suggesting this is part of a truly international criminal enterprise that may be responsible for hundreds of millions in art theft across multiple continents. Julia's documentation of these discrepancies required extensive photography and research that created exactly the kind of suspicious behavior that would attract attention from museum security and law enforcement agencies. Her repeated visits to multiple museums, detailed photography of specific pieces, and coordination with auction houses to examine pieces claimed to have museum provenance looked like the activities of someone planning or executing systematic art theft. FBI Art Crime Team Special Agent David Chen was reviewing suspicious activity reports when he noticed unusual patterns associated with Julia Roberts and several major museums and auction houses. Intelligence reports showed her making repeated visits to museum storage areas, photographing specific pieces, and purchasing expensive artworks that she immediately had analyzed by independent experts rather than adding them to her collection. "Agent Rodriguez, we need to look at this immediately," Chen told his partner as he compiled evidence of what appeared to be Julia's involvement in systematic art fraud. "We have a major celebrity making coordinated visits to multiple museums, photographing valuable pieces, and purchasing artworks through channels that suggest possible money laundering or theft operations. The pattern indicates someone with sophisticated knowledge of the art market and access to significant financial resources." Agent Chen's investigation was complicated by Julia's celebrity status and legitimate art collecting activities, but the evidence seemed to indicate criminal behavior. Financial records showed millions of dollars in art purchases followed by immediate expert analysis rather than normal collector behavior, and her detailed photography of museum pieces matched patterns typically associated with art theft planning or authentication fraud. The decision to arrest Julia was made after FBI agents intercepted communications between her investigation team and international art experts that appeared to show coordination in moving valuable artworks across international borders. What the agents didn't realize was that these communications were legitimate research activities designed to trace the origins of fraudulent pieces, not evidence of Julia's own criminal enterprise. On October 15th at 2:47 p.m., Agent Chen and his team arrived at the Metropolitan Museum, where Julia was conducting another research visit, with arrest warrants charging her under the National Stolen Property Act and conspiracy to commit international art fraud. The timing was chosen to minimize disruption to museum operations while ensuring that Julia could be arrested before potentially fleeing the country with stolen artworks. "Julia Fiona Roberts, I'm Special Agent David Chen with the FBI Art Crime Team," he announced as Julia examined a supposedly authentic Monet in the museum's European Paintings wing. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit art theft, violations of the National Stolen Property Act, and international trafficking of stolen cultural property. These charges carry potential sentences of up to 20 years in federal prison." Julia's reaction was immediate shock, followed by urgent concern about the timing of her arrest and its impact on her investigation of the museum fraud network. "Agent Chen, there's been a terrible misunderstanding," she said as federal agents applied restraints while museum visitors and staff watched in disbelief. "I haven't stolen any artworks. I've been investigating a criminal network that's been replacing museum pieces with forgeries. My arrest is actually helping the real criminals by stopping the investigation right before I could expose them." But Agent Chen was convinced he was dealing with a sophisticated criminal who possessed the intelligence and resources to create elaborate justifications for her illegal activities. "Ms. Roberts, we have extensive evidence of your coordination with international art dealers, millions in suspicious art purchases, and detailed photography of valuable museum pieces. Your activities match the profile of organized art theft operations that we've been tracking for years." As news of Julia's arrest spread through entertainment and art world networks, the reaction was explosive and immediate. The idea that America's sweetheart could be involved in international art theft seemed impossible to many, but others pointed to the evidence as proof that celebrity culture had corrupted even the most seemingly trustworthy public figures. But while media attention focused on the scandal of arresting one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses, Julia's legal team and the project authenticity investigators made a decision that would ultimately vindicate her and expose the FBI's catastrophic mistake. They released comprehensive documentation of her 8-month investigation, including evidence that showed she had been working to protect cultural treasures rather than steal them. The evidence that Julia's team had assembled was staggering in its scope and professional quality. Financial records showed exactly how the forgery network operated. Comparative analysis documented the replacement of authentic pieces with reproductions, and recorded communications revealed criminal coordination between museum directors, auction houses, and international art dealers who had been systematically looting America's cultural heritage. Agent Chen found himself reviewing evidence that completely contradicted his assumptions about Julia's criminal involvement. Instead of operating an art theft ring, the documentation showed the most sophisticated private investigation of cultural fraud ever conducted, with evidence quality that exceeded what most law enforcement agencies could achieve with traditional methods. Within 72 hours of Julia's arrest, federal prosecutors were reviewing not just the evidence against her, but the evidence she had assembled against the actual art fraud network. What they found was a comprehensive case for federal prosecutions that could destroy a criminal organization that had been operating undetected for over 5 years while stealing hundreds of millions in cultural treasures. The evidence Julia had compiled revealed that the criminal network extended far beyond what even she had initially suspected. FBI analysis of her documentation identified connections to 17 major museums across the United States, 43 international auction houses, and forgery workshops operating in 6 different countries. The scope of the operation suggested that cultural institutions worldwide had been systematically looted for nearly a decade. Special Agent Chen found himself leading the largest art crime investigation in FBI history, coordinating with law enforcement agencies in 12 countries to simultaneously raid forgery workshops, arrest criminal network members, and recover stolen masterpieces. Ms. Roberts' investigation provided us with intelligence that would have taken our department years to develop, Chen acknowledged during a joint task force briefing. Her work essentially handed us a complete roadmap to dismantling this entire criminal enterprise. The international raids, executed simultaneously across multiple time zones on November 3rd, resulted in the discovery of sophisticated forgery workshops equipped with museum-quality conservation equipment and laboratories capable of creating synthetic versions of historic pigments that could fool standard authentication tests. Julia was released from custody with all charges dropped and formal apologies from the FBI and Department of Justice for the mistake that had nearly allowed the real criminals to destroy evidence and escape prosecution. But more importantly, her investigation led to coordinated federal raids that resulted in the arrest of 23 individuals, including museum directors, auction house executives, and international art dealers, along with the recovery of over $400 million in stolen authentic masterpieces. The recovered artworks included pieces that museums had not even realized were missing, having been replaced with forgeries so sophisticated that they had passed routine inspections and conservation assessments for years. Among the most significant recoveries was Van Gogh's The Poet's Garden, which had been stolen from the Metropolitan Museum and replaced with a forgery that had been on display for over 3 years without detection. Dr. Richard Steinberg, the Whitney Museum director who had masterminded the criminal network, was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $200 million in restitution. During his sentencing hearing, Federal prosecutors noted that his abuse of public trust had endangered cultural heritage treasures that belonged to all of humanity, not just the institutions charged with their care. What started as Julia Roberts expanding her personal art collection became the largest successful prosecution of museum fraud in American history, with criminal convictions that sent shockwaves through the international art world and led to comprehensive reforms in how cultural institutions authenticate and protect their collections. 6 months after her arrest, Julia was honored by the International Association of Museum Directors for her contribution to protecting cultural heritage, while the authentic masterpieces recovered through her investigation were returned to their rightful places in museums across the country. The case proved that sometimes the most important battles for preserving culture are fought not by institutions or government agencies, but by individuals who care enough to investigate when something doesn't seem right. We want to hear from you. Have you ever noticed something that seemed suspicious but wasn't sure whether to investigate further? Julia's story shows how one person's curiosity and determination can expose massive criminal operations that authorities completely missed. Share your thoughts about this incredible case in the comments below, and let us know if you think there might be other areas where similar fraud could be happening without anyone noticing. Your engagement and comments help us bring you more amazing stories like this, so don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content that reveals the truth behind the headlines.